Hey everyone, welcome back to the Crosscheck, the squawk sheet that uncovers the stories, challenges, and careers shaping business aviation. I'm your host, Rob Hoffman, along with Ian Lump, and we're so glad you're joining us here today. If you're passionate about BizAv, mentorship, and want to stay ahead, then make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Don't forget you can also catch us on your favorite streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube for a more visual experience. Today, we're joined by someone with a truly insightful and frankly entertaining approach to aviation safety. JJ Madison is an airline pilot, author, and philanthropist whose new book, Yikes, 100 Smart Pilots and the Dumb Things They Did Yet Lived to Tell About Them, dives deep into decades of NASA ASRS reports to uncover what pilots actually do when things go sideways. His work blends humor, education, and human factors, and even better, the book funds scholarships for aspiring pilots through the Victor Kilo Fund. JJ, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks. What an opening. Wow.
I
I
do
feel
my
like I owe you
best.
money.
Sometimes with a little help from AI, but
Oh,
awesome.
that was great. Thank you very
So
much. It's so happy to be here.
it's great having you here. And so way beyond AI, why don't we dive into something very organic? Talk to us about how you first got hooked on aviation.
Sure. Well, okay. The very first time I got definitely hooked, I was in third grade and outside the Murch Elementary School where I grew up. I went to school. We had a field day where all the students were brought out from their classes, and Captain Dan landed his Bell 47 helicopter in the playground of our school, and we were able to. They marched us around it and sat us around in a circle, and he talked about his job as a traffic reporter for WMAL in Washington, D.C., and I was hooked. And from that moment on, but honestly, it was like another 24, 25 years before I actually was able to take up aviation in a meaningful way. I stopped and started a couple of times, but I didn't really have anybody in my world that was in aviation. I just didn't know how to do it. I tell the story that when I was like 12 years old, I found out about the Civil Air Patrol, and I told my friends, "Hey, let's go join the Civil Air Patrol. You can learn to fly for free." And they wanted to play baseball, and I wanted to be with my friends, so I ended up playing baseball.
There's worse things that can happen, but sooner or later, and it's interesting there, I think everyone's got one of those moments there where they go to an air show or something like that. I did some helicopter training, and I think the first time you're up close and personal with a helicopter taking off or landing, it's an incredibly impressive sight. So, what was it that finally got you over the hump? How did you finally make that leap to becoming a pilot?
So I was in Hollywood. And I'd been writing in Hollywood for about 7 years, and I'd had some success. I was, making money. I was having scripts sold, but nothing was getting made. People were calling me in to do script doctoring, but nothing was getting made. And I was just kind of it was a grind, and I was kind of burned out. And I went to an air show. I found out that Compton, California, has an airfield, a little airfield that was built around World War II as like a reliever for the Los Alamitos and Long Beach. So when pilots were learning to fly for the Army Air Corps, if they lost an engine or something, they could land at Compton. And that airport stayed open. And the California Black Aviation Association was headquartered there, and every year they would do an annual Compton Air Fair where they would open the gates to the airfield and let the kids in from the neighborhood and expose them to aviation. And I was one of the adults that was getting exposed to aviation. And there I met two Tuskegee Airmen, um, uh, Roger Terry and Mr. Foreman. And I kind of told them my sad tale of woe about I'm so burned out from Hollywood. I want to do something else. I got to do something else or I'll die. And they said, "Come on, kid, we'll take you under our wing." And they kind of mentored me into getting a second degree in aviation professional pilot at Long Beach City College. They showed me where the best places to kind of go and do a Part 61 flight training. And they helped mentor me and ultimately helped get me into the airlines.
That's amazing. That's
That's cool.
amazing. Can you, you're all about, mistakes and basically training, and obviously you wrote a whole book about this, right? So why don't you talk to us about some of your early mistakes or learning moments that maybe inspired you along this path to write this book?
I talked about how I had some fits and starts. So when I was 22, I had saved up 40 days worth of vacation, and I took it all in a row. And I went out to Leesburg Airport in outside of Washington D.C. because I was going to get my pilot's license in 40 days. God darn it! And I met with a freelance flight instructor, and he took me up. And previous to this, I'd only been at big airports. So we took off. We did some air work, and he says to me, okay, time to find the airfield. And I look around and I'm thinking that an airfield, a small airfield like Leesburg, would look like a miniature version of Dulles. White tarmac, huge runways, terminals. And I couldn't find this thing in the middle of all these farm pastures and residential homes. And I said, I can't find it. It's too small. And he hits me on the shoulder and says, it's not the airport is exactly the size it needs to be. It's not the fault of the airport. It's your vision that needs enlarging. And I was like, but so I really wanted to learn from this guy. Sadly, for some reason, he suddenly stopped flying, left, and he took my logbook with him when he left. And I had 22 hours in it that are unaccounted for. That's one example.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that stuck with you too, right? Even though it was a small blip there, but yeah.
Yeah, it really stuck with me, and it kinda and then, when I finally started flying, I decided that 'cause I realized quickly that, okay, I'm not Chuck Yeager, I'm not a natural born pilot. I'm gonna be one of these guys who's gonna have to really try very hard and practice a lot to make it happen, and that's where the sort of the genesis of all this, came from, was that once I realized I'm not a natural pilot, I shouldn't try and be a natural pilot, just be the pilot that I am, and that for me was somebody who practiced hard and made mistakes. Things got better for me. And when I became a CFI, it became easier for me to instruct folks because I wasn't the perfect pilot. And when they made mistakes, I could talk about how I could share my mistakes and then they would feel better about themselves.
It's interesting. There's a perfect sports analogy to this, and we happened pre-show. We were discussing the New York Jets over here in NFL football, so it's apropos right now. Um, I found over the years, I've discovered this in NFL, really in any sport, that the best head coaches were always mediocre to terrible players that never made it that far. They weren't naturals. They had to try harder. They had to think about what they were doing. And I feel that's how you become such a better teacher and a mentor when you understand that the path to get to greatness is not simple. It's not easy. And if it doesn't come natural, these are the steps you need to take to be aware
Mhm.
of, to learn to get there. So it sounds like that's a perfect situation for you as well, where it didn't come easy. And that probably really helped you as you became a flight instructor.
It did. It also helped me develop resilience and tenacity, and then also convey that to my students. I remember when I was a whole nother story, but I remember when I learned to fly helicopters, which was my first, by the way. The CFI, I was having trouble. I couldn't get to hover. I couldn't get to hover, and he would just put it into a hover. And at the end of the lesson, I was so frustrated. I was sweating. It was terrible. And he looked at me and he said, "You're going to get it tomorrow. It's no problem." And I went home thinking, "How does he know I'm going to get it tomorrow? How does he know that? It's not possible." And then I went to sleep. I woke up the next day, and I could hover.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, this guy believed in me before I could believe in myself, and as long as I can remember that and convey that, maybe I can do some good.
That's huge. Yeah, and there's always when you're flight training, and like I said, I've done both well, I've done helicopter training, and I am a private pilot. Yeah, I just have VFR. That's all.
Yeah, same, same.
Yeah, but I remember it was always that sort of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That happens all the time when you're training, and it's very easy, and I had the moments of being frustrated where I think I'm gonna give up. Yeah, I think I'm done here, and you really need those words of encouragement at times there, where it just seems like it's insurmountable, there's too much information, drinking out of water of a fire hose, blah, 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 we've all heard that before, and obviously there's the actual airmanship as well, there's so much going on there, and having a good instructor to kind of really guide you along is huge part of the equation here to achieve success. But clearly you made it. You went through, you logged you got your 1,400 hours, 1,500 hours as a flight instructor. What happened next?
So, yeah, back in when I first started, you had to have all kind of, multi-time. So I got all this multi-time and I got hired. At the time, the biggest wave, of American aviation commercial pilots, that was the 99, 2000. And I flew for 10 years, for a variety of airlines, each time trying to get a little, to get bigger equipment and more experience. And then the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009 hit. And at the time, I was a Part 135 captain, and all of our clients who had way more money than time suddenly had way more time than money. And so our little before 135 went out of business. And I couldn't get a job for years because after that there was a Colgan crash and a few other things,
Yeah.
the
That
1500
and that's when
requirement.
the 1,400-hour rule, went into effect, yeah.
Yeah. So I decided that, well, I need to stay in aviation. So I'm vain, or I have a lot of pride. Let me put it like that. I worked very hard to get my first class medical, so I kept that up. I worked very hard to get my CFI, so I kept that up. And I pitched an idea to General Aviation News because I also wanted to do some writing. I wanted to keep going with that. And I noticed that nobody was analyzing NASA reports. And so I said to Janice and Ben Sclair and Janice Wood at General Aviation who's, "Hey, what do you think? I'll pitch some. I'll analyze the NASA reports. I'll always start with my own snafu, so people can see, I'm not a perfect pilot, and then I'll tie it in with 3 to 5 other reports of on the same topic from the NASA reports that I've researched." And they said, "Well, yeah, sure, give it a whirl. We'll see how it goes." And so it was good. It lasted 6 years, and I did that really because when we were at the airlines, you do anything wrong, you think you did something wrong, you fill out a NASA report. But in general aviation, a lot of the people I found they were like in 2 camps. Either they'd never heard of the NASA reports or they didn't trust the government. So my my doing my column was my way of getting people kind of warmed up to the concept of confessing onto it on a NASA report and reminding them, hey, if you didn't do it on purpose, it wasn't illegal, you didn't kill anybody, you didn't break any metal, you hadn't been violated in the last 5 years on that, and you turned it in within 10 days, it's basically a get out of jail free card. Everything gets anonymized, and it goes to the ASRS website that you described, and it's available for everybody to look at and kind of virtual hanger fly and go, huh, I'll either never do that or I learned not to do that from that person's report.
Yeah, there's no
Nice.
question about it.
Yeah, I spent some time in the safety world selling SMS platforms to 91s and 135s, and one of the things that I learned during that time was there is kind of a stark division between the people that do take advantage of programs that are out there and actually pay attention and use the information that they have at their fingertips to be better. And then there's the other ones that just kind of, I don't want to say ignorantly, go about their business, but maybe just, well, I've never had that happen to me, so I don't need to worry about it. And then it does. And then now this could have been avoided. So having resources and tools and things at your disposal that you can use to be better at your job is huge. And not everybody is a do it the right way kind of person the first time. And all of these stories that you've analyzed and looked at, how did you pick the 100 smartest pilots that did the dumbest thing? It seems like a lot to go through.
Well, that's a great question, Ian. I mean, that's a really good question. So I did during my 6 years of writing the human factors column for General Aviation News, I did about 72, 73 columns. Two things happened post COVID. 2023, on vacation with my wife. We're headed to New Zealand. We do an overnight in Los Angeles just because we don't want to do the 20-hour flight straight. And I run into one of my former crash pad buddies who's now a Southwest Airlines captain. First thing he says after we hug it out is, "When are you getting back in?" And I was like, "Dude, it's been like 14 years." He goes, "They're desperate for veteran pilots. When are you getting back in?" So I laughed it off. We went to New Zealand. We come back, and my texter's blowing up. I got 2 United captains and 3 other Southwest captains going, "When are you getting back in? When are you getting back in?" So just for giggles, I wrote an email to PSA Airlines, American Airlines, wholly owned, and said, "This is my situation. I live in DC. I'd like to," and they asked me for an interview within 30 minutes and they hired me on the spot. And I was like, that's never happened before. So I was so grateful for that, that I wanted to do something to give back because to me, this is like the spirit of Roger Terry, Mr. Foreman, and Lee Archer, coming back to help me to resurrect my career. And around the same time, I heard about a guy named Reverend Russell White who had started Eagle Flight Squadron in the basement of his church in East Orange, New Jersey. And he started it because, in his words, he wanted to keep kids in his neighborhood out of prison, the hospital, or the cemetery. And I thought, That's really cool. I'd like to be part of this. How can I help? And I'll tell you, I'm the first to tell you, I'm kind of slow to the helm. It took me about a week to realize, dude, you're a writer. You've written 72 columns. If you take the best of those columns and put them into a book and then sell the book, and any proceeds might be able to help him with a flight scholarship or his group. And if you sell more than a few, then you can help a lot more people. So that's the genesis of the book. And so then it was a matter of going through the 72 columns and looking at the best 33, which came up to 100 pilots or so. So that going through the book with my editor and coming up with the best 33 is how we came up with those particular 100. It was they were sort of the most popular columns, the most gripping, compelling stories, and so that's how we started, and that's why the book was written.
It's wonderful, and look, I know you write with, humor and purpose, and that's your style. Can you share just a couple of your favorites right now? Maybe give us a little sneak, preview of what we can expect if we open up that book?
Sure. Well, the story that I told about not being able to find the airport made me realize it was all about expectations and fixation, right? I expected an airport to look like Dulles everywhere you go, no matter how tiny. So I couldn't find the airport. And then fixation, I was fixated on finding an airport that looked like Dulles, only tiny. And so one of the stories in there is about pilots who had the same issue and mistook one pilot mistook a large parking lot for an airport because he was looking for a large swath of tarmac that had white lines painted on it. So there you go. He got to about 50 feet and then took off before he landed. And another one is about this C-5 Galaxy flight crew who was going into, I think it's Jabra Air Force Base in the middle of the country. I want to say Missouri, but it could be Kansas. And there was another field. This was at night, but it was a VFR night, and there was another field 5 miles this side of that airport, not on their charts, but it had a very similar ILS lighting system. So they landed there. It was a 3,000-foot runway. They
Yeesh.
landed at like 2,700 feet. They made it.
Yeah,
They didn't get out,
that
but they
must I'm
made it
about to
in.
say, how they get out of there is the next question. I'm sure stripped
Somebody had to
everything
do it
out
the
of the
next. Yeah,
airplane, have,
that's
what,
right.
8
It
gallons of
was.
fuel?
That's right. That part was bonkers, but it was because they expected to see the lighting system that they saw, and they expected the field to look approximately how it looked at that altitude. And so, but when they saw the first one, not the second one, they landed at the first one. So that's
So, I mean, I'm sure in the end, and this is we're humans, right? And obviously we have procedures, and that's why safety is paramount, especially in the United States, where we lead the world in it. And I think we're pretty good at it, particularly at the commercial level and military as well. But can you talk to us just a little more? Let's just go a little deeper now into maybe some common cognitive errors or overconfidence traps, situational awareness, automation, which I know we're all sort of guilty of, whether it's our self-driving cars or whether you're a pilot or the autopilot, maybe an over-reliance on that as well. Are there any other patterns or things that you see here amongst all of the things I gave you, which you see as a common thread here of what you're trying to, showcase in the book?
I think overconfidence is one that comes to mind. There was one pilot who had, I got two pilot stories. The first one is about a Cessna 310 check hauler. Okay. He was a CFI, but also a check hauler. And he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep the night before, and he had to get up super early and drive to his airplane. And then he flew and he thought, I'll take a couple of winks, before I land. Programmed the automation, went to sleep. Next thing he knows, he's 300 miles out over the Gulf,
Oof.
and he wakes up and realizes, I don't know where the heck I am. And when he finally got himself resituated, he made his way almost back to near Pensacola before he had to ditch.
Wow.
And when he got out, he managed to hang on to his seat cushions for several minutes until the Coast Guard came and picked him up. And his takeaway, and this is the great thing about NASA reports, because the people who were involved in these incidents live to tell about it, and then they tell what their takeaway is. His takeaway wasn't that he shouldn't have gotten more sleep, or that he should have paid more attention to where he was, or that he should have stayed hydrated. Any of the things that contributed to his fatigue and then falling asleep. His takeaway was, I need to learn how to swim.
I mean, solve one problem, but I think we could
It
maybe
is a
solve the
takeaway. I
bigger
don't know
one.
if it's the right takeaway.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then another quick story is about a CFI who flew 2 hours in an Aero Piper Aero to his job, instructed for 5 hours. So he's already been flying for 7 hours. And then it's dusk, and he decides he's going to fly the 2 hours back to base. And it's uh, it's it's kind of a hazy, overcast flight. As I said, it's also at night. He takes off, and after a while, he has a radio problem. He can't get his radios to work. So he is able to use his backup, and then he finally is okay. I'll just go with the backup, and then one radio starts to work again, so he continues on. 20 minutes later, ATC's asking him if what heading he's on, and he thinks he's flying straight level, and then he realized, oh crap, I've got a partial panel situation because his DG was failing. And so he doesn't, with the radio, he doesn't decide to divert. With the partial panel problem, he decides, well, I'm a CFII, so I'm going to flex my partial panel muscles and I'm going to continue the flight. He's got 45 minutes more to go in IMC. So he says, I'm going to do this, right?
Oof, oof, wow.
And he's struggling along. And finally, I don't know, out of the blue, honest to gosh, what happens is the cargo door opens and and his backpack is edging out. So he manages to grab his backpack he doesn't get the door closed, but he manages to grab his backpack. And only when that door opened did he realize I should probably get on the ground. And then he manages to circle down to an area, but he can't quite see the runway. ATC doesn't clear him because he's in a mountainous area or terrain filled area that they can't guarantee him separation from the terrain, but he does it anyway. He invokes 91 103, and he lands safely. And his takeaway was, well, I mean, I was doing awesome. I think I handled everything calmly. I managed my radios. I managed my partial panel, and the only reason I got down was because I was going to lose my backpack.
And didn't want to lose your gear. Yeah.
What as a result, what the great takeaway that I teach folks when I talk about this lesson is that this is a guy who didn't think all the way through. His partial panel could have been a bigger electrical problem. His vacuum pump failure could have been an even bigger problem. Was it a wet vacuum or dry vacuum? Wet vacuum means that it's being lubed by the same oil that's running your engine. And could he have ended up, small chance, but it could have ended up with an engine seizure, right? Dry vacuum is a whole nother issue that he didn't consider. And so again, sort of like that overconfidence that I can overcome these things and continue the mission.
There's a lot of pilots out there that, get home itis, I think is what they called it.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah. Go
one of our
itis.
former
Yeah.
guests, Mace Curran, I was watching a quick TikTok or something she had did, and she was talking about a trip like that. But a lot of pilots just get overconfident. They're like, I'm almost there. I'll be fine. Even though five things are on fire and you're just scrambling to maybe make that last 20 minutes.
That's
Well,
right.
you should
That's right.
probably just take a beat and reset one way or the other. So
Yeah, no, I think all pilots constantly need these reminders because just like you said there, CFII, high time pilot, you've seen it all, you've been through it all, and you feel like you can do anything. And there's almost like this curve where pilots get into accidents kind of at the beginning and at the end of their careers. Obviously that sometimes is the truly end of their career, but it's because you're so confident, you've been doing it for so long, and you kind of your startle factor doesn't really it doesn't work as well as it used to because you just feel
That's
this
right.
is my normal,
Yeah.
and it can create another situation. Is there any story in particular? I know you get into ATC communication breakdowns, checklists, and all that good stuff there, which I'm sure there's some amazing stories in there. But which one's your favorite? Is there maybe you want to bury it a little bit? You don't want to give everything away, but is there one there in particular that you'd love to highlight before we move on?
That's a great question. Well, I think hesitancy. Uh, the chapter title is called Hesitancy, and it starts because with me, I'm flying a twin with some friends. We're going up to Portland, and one of them is an FO with Horizon, and instead of commuting up in an airliner, we're giving her the ride. And all of a sudden things get pretty bumpy and all, but not so bumpy that you would expect people to start vomiting, but people start vomiting in the back. Everybody's vomiting and I don't know what to do. I mean, I want to get her to the airport because she needs to report, right? And so what if my friends are, they're vomiting on themselves, but I need to get her there. And I just kept trucking along until suddenly I began to feel really sick. And so
Can I
I
ask you a
then,
question, JJ? Did you have the fish?
that's exactly what happened. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened. We landed, I managed to get out onto the tarmac before I blew my chunks. But that was what happened. It wasn't the turbulence, it's that we all had a bad lunch.
Yeah.
But it was the hesitancy of not wanting to declare an emergency because it was my first. And the reality is, what I learned from that and other people in their NASAs is that not only is it important to declare emergency because everybody now is working for you,
Mhm.
but if the situation resolves, you can undeclare the emergency and proceed on your way. And
I think most people are not aware of that.
that's right.
That's a
That's right.
really interesting take, which I really like because I feel like once you've kind of broken the glass and, in case of emergency, and all the king's horses, all the king's men are all rallying to support you, you feel like it's irreversible. At least I always thought it was. I didn't realize
Yeah.
you could kind of say, "Never mind, just kidding."
You can undeclare an emergency. A lot of airline pilots don't want to declare an emergency because they don't want to do the paperwork,
Mhm.
right? But the reality is, GA pilot, airline pilot, just a good old commercial pilot, if you declare an emergency and you resolve the issue and you can continue, you simply undeclare the emergency. And it actually is to the benefit of everybody, right? Because
Mhm.
now nobody's clearing the airspace. They're not vectoring people around. You're not got airport rescue fire on standby. And you're not screaming down at, 8,900 feet per minute to get to below 10,000, all that kind of stuff. You can just continue.
That's a great bit of advice. I love that.
I wanna hear about Victor Kilo Fund. Lot of a lot of what I do has to do with giving back and lifting others. And when I heard that you were involved with this, I wanted to learn more about it. And I don't want to spoil it. I want you to tell our viewers, listeners, all about this and how you got involved with it, and why you're giving back to it through your book.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the time really and the space to be able to do this. So when I decided to write the book, my wife and I decided we were going to start a nonprofit aerospace education fund and use all the proceeds from the book to set up either flight training scholarships, other scholarships, possibly the ability to buy Redbird full motion flight simulators for STEM programs, under-resourced flight schools, or CAP squadrons as well. Because these people, the biggest thing what we've discovered is that the number one impediment to people learning to do something in aerospace is money. And then number two is education. So if we can take care of the money, we can take care of some of the education. And then thinking about this, I thought about using my name on the fund, but I thought, I like Victor Kilo. And Victor Kilo, I like it because it's Greek for 1,000 wins, 1,000 victories. And if you're going to do something big in your life, no matter what it is, it usually takes 1,000 little victories to get to where you're going. So Victor Kilo stuck.
Love that.
And so a year ago today, we started selling the book. We set up the fund in November of 2024, and then we started selling the book. And just before we started selling the book, I called the folks at Eagle Flight Squadron, or Reverend Russell White's group in East Orange. I said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. We're planning on doing this. We're selling the book." And they're like, "Okay." And then I called them and said, "Hey, we're actually selling some books. So we're hoping to do something if we can with you." And they were like, "Okay." And then in May of 2025, I called them and I said, "Hey, listen, we've done so well. We've got a $5,000 flight scholarship that we'd like to present to you." So they were like, "Okay."
Okay, yeah, now you got my attention. Yeah.
So on June, let me see if you can see that, June 14th, 2025, we presented our very first $5,000 flight scholarship to Eagle Flight Squadron. And I'm happy to report that because they own two airplanes, they're able to, that scholarship goes to, can fund one person for their whole PPL. And that student has all of his written and now he's finished soloing. So we're very excited to see the progress there.
So just out of curiosity, is it individuals or organizations that typically apply for the scholarship funds?
So we're small now, but we're hoping to get big. We have an audacious goal of selling 1 million books, If we sell 1 million books, we'll be able to provide between 10 and $15 million in scholarships. And right now, so Eagle Flight Squadron was the very first because they're the ones who sort of inspired
The
us.
impetus, yeah.
Yeah, and now we've got another 10 grand, thanks to folks who purchased books. So now we're looking at, we're looking at both individuals who have come across our path and organizations. The more we grow, the more it's about organizations and individuals who we find or people who might apply to us and go, hey, I'd really like
Well, what
to.
criteria are you using? I'm sure you're getting more applications than there is funds, at least at this moment. How are you choosing the winners beyond Eagle Flight School, which obviously they're first in line?
Yeah. So it's something I'm doing with the board of directors. And the criteria are based on, for instance, if they're a student, a high school student or a college student, academic prowess. I mean, they've got to be serious about it. What their interests are, whether it's flight scholarship or if it's meteorological because they want to be a meteorologist or if they want to be an AMT. They've got to have a real interest and have made information steps toward it if they're an individual. And then we have some other criteria that we're developing with the board. And for organizations, really, that's easy because it's easy to vet them. Any serious organization is going to have a web presence, and they're going to have information that we can take a look at and see.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't mention that I serve on the board of a nonprofit that helps get kids involved in STEM and aviation. And I'm definitely going to talk to the rest of my board members about maybe getting involved in and trying to get some of that scholarship dollar donated towards us to help farm that out to others as we do events and things and get people involved. But if nothing else, I know you're based still in the DCA area, right? So we do have an event once a year that's not too far from you. Would love to have you come check it out. So I'll reach out to you after this about that. But it's funny how all these things work, and we're all always a little connected, even if we don't realize it. And happy to have you share more about that here today. So thank you very much.
Ian, thank you. That's really huge. I'm looking forward to collaborating with your group and organization. And really, the exposure that I get from you here on the Crosscheck podcast, sales will help increase. And the more money we get, the more scholarships. Like I said, I make pretty good money as an airline pilot, so I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it because so that all the proceeds can go toward the scholarship funds for other folks. So
Love it.
very excited.
I love it. You talk about credibility, then it kind of just says it all right there. It's
Yeah.
kind of incredible. Really applaud you for what you're doing. Okay, let's just go into a quick lightning round here. Have a little fun
Okay.
before we say our goodbyes. Are there any ASRS stories that you didn't include in the book that you kind of wish you had?
Well, that's a great one. Yeah, there are a lot. To be honest, I'd love to do a Yikes 2 or Yikes again or something like that. Right. So if this does pretty well, there are going to be others. Yeah.
Is there any bit of advice right here from this platform, right here, right now, that you'd love to give to young pilots listening or prospective pilots?
Aside from buying the book. Look,
Everybody
the
needs to buy
reality
the book.
is that, the book is like virtual hanger flying, right? The best way to learn is to hanger fly either with a book or out at an airport with other pilots. Because there's so much you have to learn and so much you realize you don't know once you start to learn stuff that it's almost impossible to have every single experience that's going to make you a master pilot. So I would encourage people to go hanger fly either virtually or out at a local airfield and just hang out with pilots. We're pretty cool.
I agree. I love that's the reason why I do the show here, just so I get to hang out and talk to you, talk shop over here. Any final words about maybe the takeaway that you hope anyone that picks up the book Yikes kind of can walk away with?
Yeah, it's all about the book teaches. It shows you that flying is a field, is an industry, is an endeavor that takes constant practice. And in order to do very well at it, it's like playing piano. You can play piano, but to be really good at it, you got to practice. And to be a pilot, you can do it, but to be really good at it, you got to practice. And one of the ways to practice is to practice mentally and sort of suck up all the experience because then you're going to by practicing, you develop resilience and the tenacity to handle the situations that may come. And that's what this book shows you is that these pilots, even though they made these snafus, they actually learned from their experiences. They developed resilience and tenacity as a result of their experiences, and they went on to become better pilots. And that's the biggest takeaway I hope you can get from the book is that becoming a pilot takes a lot. And the best way to do that is to develop tenacity and resilience.
And at least one of those pilots came away learning how to be a better swimmer. So
Yeah, also swim lessons. That would be yeah.
I had to throw that in there.
Outstanding. Right on. Right on.
All right. Wonderful. JJ, this was fantastic. I really want to thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing and for sharing your story. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Shameless plug, www.yikesthebook.com, yikesthebook.com. You can buy it. You can get it on that way through Amazon as Kindle, as an Audible, as well as a signed paperback. You have that opportunity as well.
And I was actually going to add that for everyone listening, you can also find the book on I believe you can find it on the Victor Kilo Fund page. And if you want to learn more about that, that's victorkilofund.org if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I feel like I owe you money.
Our pleasure. All right. Thanks once again, JJ. And a reminder for all the listeners at home to follow us on LinkedIn, like and subscribe, and be sure to share the show with your friends and colleagues. A review or feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us spread the word. It really makes a difference to help support the show. We will see you all next week with a new episode of The Crosscheck.